Hi everybody, how's it going? I know there was a quite long time since the last video, but I just couldn't hurry up this diorama. The more I researched the period pictures, the more I wanted to add to the diorama. Plus I didn't get much straight time for modeling. Well, anyway, it is finally done, and if you kept tuned, at least you could check my progress with the short videos I posted. But enough of chip chat, and let's go through the diorama building process. First, I choose some pictures to use as reference. As you can see, the real barricade has infinite stuff piled up. I picked the most eye-catch ones and focus on them. The rest will be what I had in hand and some creativity license. Now that I have the overall idea, I cut the base in a rough circular shape from styrofoam. Then cut this blue packing foam and chop it in many rectangular shaped tiles. That I glued on place with the PVA glue. You can ask yourself, why? The same question I made myself in the middle of the process. And the answer is because who knows. I just want to try this, but really, I could or I should make it just by scribing the foam, way much faster, but I'll save this method for some other specific moment. After this pharaonic effort, because I really had a lot of free time, I trimmed the excess with a hot wire foam cutter fixed to my workbench. To smooth the foam sides, I applied a burnt cement paste that is a leftover from my apartment reno. I applied it with my fingers, and after dried it was sanding time, and I mean a lot of sanding, until I got a glossy finish. Despite the insane amount of hours spent on this base so far, that I could make it much easier, the result is at least quite rewarding. Okay, time for some painting. I started by giving a black coat on the whole base, then started the tedious task of painting each stone with different tones of greys and browns with Vallejo acrylics. To fill the gaps and also reduce the contrast between the stones, I made a mix of speckle, dark green and olive green from Vallejo acrylics. Give a good stir and applied it over the painted base in a thick coat. The excess mix was wiped out with a napkin and later with a moisture brush. If you wanna try this method too, as it is quite scary actually, just remember to be careful in this step to don't rip off the underlaying paint. A final touch was to add a dark grey wash to build the contrast between stones. And the base is ready to start piling stuff on. First thing is a tree, that you can see here. I made it by twisting some copper wires, giving the basic shape of the trunk and some main branches, trimming the excess wires to give the tree shape. Later I applied a coat of black superglue to hold everything in place and fix some seafoam twigs here and there to build up the volume of the tree canopy using UV resin. The tree was painted in grayish brown, with some texture painted with various Vallejo colors. Then I sprinkle some knot leaves, starting from dark olives and greens in the whole tree canopy, and moving to lighter greens on some external spots to increase the depth effect. And this is the resultant tree that will go on the diorama sidewalk. Moving to the wooden cable rolls. There are two of them in the picture that can be seen and are quite visible close to the tank's front sides. I scratched them from 1mm plastic sheet. First, I drew circles and then cut it roughly round with scissors. The shapes were awful, but then I stacked them to my Dremel tool, sanding them to the final shape, getting a nice and smooth circle form. I made them together so all pieces would have the same diameter. Then I scribed the wood planks and scrubbed them with a wire brush to simulate some wooden veins. A piece of cylindrical cardboard was used to connect the roll halves, and a 0.5mm thin solder wire was used as the cable. I cut some square plastic card pieces, glued them around the center of each roll, drilled holes on them and stick small copper wire to simulate the bolts. The painting was quite tricky. First step was a black primer followed by a deck-tan sprayed in zenithal method. Then a lot of different shades of Vallejo acrylics browns, very diluted, starting from the darker shades to clear ones, but always blending the colors using the wet blending technique. The metal parts were painted first with a light gray, followed by AK streaking grime to give the rust effect. There is a name printed on each wooden roll, but in the picture it can't be seen entirely. So I guess it was written cable vac, which makes sense because those wooden rolls have some metal cables rolling, right? Anyway, I painted this name with a 00 brush and some dark grey acrylic color, Far from perfect, but I guess it will be enough. The cables were painted with light grays, just to highlight the top layers and enhance the fake shadows and depth perception. Then a layer of AK streaking grime effect was applied to give the used appearance. The last scratched pieces were these two wooden containers. I just chopped a plastic cardboard into several stripes, then glued them together and painted in the same wet blending method from the wooden rolls, only using darker shades of brown. From now on, a fellow modeler kindly 3D printed some stuff to add to the barricade. There are a lot of stuff like some wooden barrels, chairs, tables, metal buckets and containers and so on. All the wooden effects were painted with my favorite wet blending. I just used different shades of browns and earth tones. Painting this stuff was quite fun actually. I really liked the results, but I always feared painting wooden effects. Probably the way I painted may not be detailed enough for bigger scales, but I guess for 7 seconds it's good enough. Moving to the wardrobe. That wasn't supposed to be used, because as you can see, the 3D printing had some problems with the wooden sides thickness, that are quite thin, so it was supposed to be thrown away, but I looked at it again and felt it would have a good use to the barricade. I first applied the usual black primer, then I painted it with brown shades and wet blending. After that, I sprayed the wardrobe outside with chipping fluid and painted it with white and deck tan, then scratched the whole piece. I wanted to make it a bit different from the other stuff that will go on the barricade, to add some color contrast, which will be quite welcome here. As one of the wardrobe's doors are open, I decided to increase it a little by simulating a broken mirror on its inside. For that I cut a rectangular shaped metal foil and stick it in place. But it alone wasn't very convincing, so I cut the same rectangular shape, but this time from an acetate sheet. Then I scraped it a bit with the hobby blade to make some broken mirror effect, and glued it over the foil using clear varnish. It is far from perfect, but I guess it gave a nice touch to the broken wardrobe. Well, there are tons of things to add to the barricade, besides the tank itself. However, I think some figures is a good addition to the diorama, to give a better size perspective. So I bought these two figures from Dynamo, depicting two partisans in relaxed position, which I think are perfect for what I was looking for. Both figures received the first black primer and then a deck 10 Zenithal airbrush. The colors palette was what I wanted actually, to paint the clothes. I followed my usual diluted Vallejo acrylics paint, adding some coats of paint, just enough to keep the color variation built by the Zenithal method. Nothing fancy. And there's a lot of stuff here. But now I need to put everything together in a way it blends more naturally than just piling them up on the base. To start, I mix again some speckle with different colors, ranging from dark gray, yellow ochre and some brick colors. Lay this mix on a piece of plastic board and let it dry. Then it was time to crush them with some pliers assistance, and other tools of course, to turn them into small fragments and dust. Here I'm just showing one hardened mix color, but I made the crush into all different colors and put each one in separate recipients. To increase the rubble volume, I used this speckle-like material used to fill holes on walls, which can be found in basically any hardware store, and mixed with acrylics. This paste is quite useful actually, and it almost doesn't shrink after dry. So I use it to start putting stuff on the barricade, helping to stick them on place and not quite even to the floor, giving that appearance of being thrown in place. There are a lot of rubble that can be seen in the pictures, so I started to sprinkle the crushed speckle here and there, trying to vary the colors, to don't end up with a monochromatic and boring look. The surroundings get quite full, so I need to focus on the tank's underfloor. I removed the tank, marked where the tracks will be, and started laying down some wood planks made from plastic that are leftovers from those wooden boxes I made earlier. Yet, this bunch of stuff laid down on the base need to be better blended to the scenery. To do it, I mixed the fine dust, resulting from the crushing process, from the different colors, but not well mixed, I mean, just put them together so some color variation could also be seen. Then I just start to sprinkle this mix over the base, but focusing on some areas. To fix this in place, I moisture everything with alcohol, followed by diluted PVA glue. With everything secured in place, I use some oils to enhance some effects, mainly on the metal buckets and containers, giving some weathered look and increasing contrasts, all to blend them to the surrounding stuff. Now I put the tank on its resting place, close to the figures on the front. And finally I glued the tree and made some minor adjustments. And it's finally done. I struggled a little with this one, as it was supposed to be a fast project, but turned into this modeling nonsense and lack of that's enough. Well, all of this because I found the profile and color schemes quite interesting. But then I started to dig in on its history, and in the end it turned into this tremendous amount of modeling work. But I guess it paid all the effort put on. After all, the history behind the Chwat is quite interesting, and there are some nice references for the diorama. So I hope you like it and worth it your waiting. Thanks for your support and subscribe if you haven't done yet, it's very important to me. So see you in the next time, cheers!